Welcome to the Born Wild podcast. This space is for birth workers, parents, and families. Anyone drawn to a more honest, intuitive way of living, birthing, and growing. Here we have real conversations, learn through reflection and community, and make room to explore without judgment. Because at the end of the day, we are all born wild. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Born Wild podcast. I'm your host, Sophia Henderson. And today I have with me again, Lisa Rawson. We were just saying, is this your third? Is it your fourth? It's her fourth time back. But for anyone who doesn't know who you are at this point, will you introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah. I'm a mom of many kids. I'm a community-based midwife, and I've practiced in various capacities in a few different states. I've worked in home and birth center, and yeah, I live in a very rural county, but work in an urban birth center. And I've known Sophia for a while now, since you were a student, actually. Um, and yeah, I've been on other podcasts, and I guess I'm known for being pretty frank about my
Maybe that's why I keep bringing you back.
about my standpoints, and maybe a little bit even. My husband keeps saying, maybe you might want to filter some of, the things of what you've done and what you're willing to do and where you're going and what. Um, but recently I have like really minimized my private practice. And I went to school and got a master's in maternal child health systems. And so I'm going to be looking at utilizing that master's to move out of on call time, because I am going to be in my 50s very, very, very soon, in a few months.
Time for
So,
rest and rejuvenation.
yeah. And I think with all of my community, unlicensed, licensed, birth center, all of that experience and the myriad of that, and working with students in various capacities, I think it can really put that to use in somewhere. I've been on a few committees and done a few things. And so just, wanting to put all of that effort behind a degree that might give me an actual little bit of a say in some sort of directorship role or something.
Love it.
Yeah. So,
Well, and
yeah.
Lisa and I have been toying around with the idea of like, should this be an ongoing segment where we like
Hmm.
talk midwifery? Because we have a lot of families that listen, but we also have a lot of birth workers that listen. So yeah, we're toying around with that idea. So this might be an ongoing thing because we have so many things to talk about today, but we'll just pick one and see if we even make it to the others.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and one of the things that we wanted to touch base on was, the, like, hidden fees, the cost of midwifery. I mean, in the sense of what families are paying for, but also, like, the things that we don't think about when we become midwives that are gonna be
Hmm.
hidden burdens, hidden costs, things to consider. Do you wanna share a little bit about, like, maybe what you thought this job would be and, like, what it turned out to be?
Yeah. Right. Point A to B to C to D.
Yeah, because like, cost financially, but also just, like, the cost, the, like,
Right.
sacrifice, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Cost is not just monetary, right?
Yeah. So it could
Especially
be that too.
all it is. Oh, it most certainly is. Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, monetarily, I think I've done quite well, to be honest, as a midwife. Um, one of that reason, there's a couple of reasons. One is I've always valued myself, and I've kind of like driven the price around me and increased my fees. I've also at the same time given a lot of free service. So I have given back to the community that I served in. I've always had a sliding scale, but for that reason, I think monetarily I've done well. The two communities I've served have really needed a midwife. I also have really worked hard on reducing my costs, so monetarily, right? So I really focused on like my lease agreement that I signed at my office was a 10-year lease agreement. I signed it
Wow.
for yeah, I signed it for $400 a month, and that included ample parking, trash, recycling, internet. Um, the main area where we had 2 bathrooms and a waiting room had a cleaning person who came, so it
Man.
included that. And yeah, it was 400 bucks. That's really cheap. And then I had a local midwife who had kind of a part-time practice. She rented the office 2 days a week, and I charged her $200 a month,
Mhm.
and which was really great for her and half my rent. So,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, yeah, and I've just made really wise decisions. I drove a used car for a long time. I think I was 47 when I bought my first new car, and that's because of COVID, the interest rates were so low for a new car.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, I've just always kept my costs really, really low. So there's that, I think, because I was a teen mom and a mom of many children at a young age, and I stayed home with my kids and homeschooled them. And so I learned very early on that a dollar saved is a dollar earned. And so I think that that's one way to mitigate your costs financially. When I got into midwifery, I I was a doula. I took Penny Simpkins' Hal's trainer course at the Seattle Midwifery School. I just came across my certificate in 1996.
aw.
The beginning course, and I think later that year it was like the fall winter advanced course or whatever, 1996. And it did make me actually think about like what was I mean at the time I chose I chose the path of midwifery as a revolutionary, like a justice revolutionary role.
Mhm,
It wasn't really to focus on moms and babies, although I love them and
mhm.
I've stuck with it for a long time. So
Perks.
so there's those perks, but really it was about the family structure and empowering the family structure to fight, the quote man, and the system. So I still see it through that lens, and I I didn't really think much about the on-call time, and, I mean, back then, it was just so different. We didn't have the internet and social media and things like that. It was really community-based, so that's changing, a lot of that is changing. I don't know how I would have felt if I would have started out seeing these Instagram posts of beautiful births and midwives with makeup on and these beautiful birth centers and that seems a lot. It's kind of like what our children are facing with social media, right?
Mhm,
So I think that would have really changed it. But I got slowly in to being a primary midwife, built my skills over many years, worked as a doula, volunteered in a hospital, and then I was like, nope, I'm not going to be a CNM, because
mhm.
that was on the table. And then became a lactation consultant, taught parenting classes, worked for WIC, just was an assistant, just slowly kind of moved into it. So I thought that when I became a primary midwife and hit it full stride, because see, I was working very, very, very part time and in various capacities, cooking, being that kind of like postpartum support, a lot of what we would consider very unassisted free birth or traditional midwife, right? That we
Mhm,
look at that lens through right now. Um, I didn't have I didn't have a Doppler. I didn't have a measuring device. I just used my hands. We never even thought that there would be bedside ultrasound. Oh my gosh. Um,
Simplicity.
so
Mhm,
yeah, it was just very simple and very, like, nourishing in that way, and still it was a lot of work, sure, hauled my kids around, my older daughter, she would watch their younger kids while we chatted, and, herbs were a huge focus of my practice and just the communities that I served. Um, when my kids got older, it was time for me to, like, take on quote, a real practice, right? And I had moved to California and was working in a capacity where I really felt, and I've talked about this, that getting licensed would give me, I didn't look at it from a protection point of view. My husband certainly did. Most certainly, my husband was like, "You can't go to jail. We got all these kids." Like, I was like, "Okay. All right, I get that. Partnership,
Mhm.
priorities, but access." It gave me access, right? It gave me access to what a population that was growing in their desire from community birth was wanting, and not necessarily being pushed towards. They were asking for ultrasounds, and they were asking for labs and things like that. And so I got licensed and I thought, well, I've got all this experience behind me, but having a busy practice really was strikingly um, different than what I thought it was going to be. I just thought, well, I'll have a day for office work and I'll have a day for this and a day for that. But the sheer amount of um, phone calls, postpartum visits. I have always done all postpartum visits in their home, and I will stand by that to the day I die. Every now and then, I'd have somebody do a 6-week postpartum visit in the office because they lived so far and they wanted to have a day in town finally. So, and I've always done well women care too. So, PAPs, labs for thyroid, menopause, fertility. I kind of worked in towards that a little bit more as well as the years went on. So, I mean, even though I was really prepared for what the work was and standing with women and families and being with them and that what that takes, long births, rescheduling, accountability, self
Oh my
accountability.
god, rescheduling like that. If
Oh yeah.
anything's gonna give me PTSD, it's being on a
Rescheduling.
2-day birth where you had, like,
Yeah.
6 appointments each day you have to reschedule, and then you have to fit in 3 visits for that baby that was
Mhm.
just born, and,
Yep.
like, oh my god.
I know. It's there's just like I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I did implement some things that made it easier. So as I earned more money, and at a certain point, I was earning a really good 6-figure salary. So we did things like Green Chef, or I had somebody come and clean my house once a week, just to take some lift off of Adam and the kids. My kids now are older, and we don't really have that going on.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so, and it's a little easier, but when there's littles in the house, and I mean teenagers too, like teenagers are, you know, God forbid anybody hear me say this, you're just large toddlers. But, I mean, in certain ways, but we paid for some things that made it easier for us because why not, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. And that
Um,
was one of the perks of the group practice that Leah and I started was we played around a
mhm,
lot with the like on-call schedule and how it's going to work. And the thing that we've loved the best so far is I'm off call this week. Leah's on call. She doesn't have any appointments. I have all the appointments. So
mhm,
like that whoever's available to go to a birth ideally, theoretically, doesn't have a bunch of appointments they need to
right.
reschedule, and the person who has all the appointments doesn't have to really worry about going to a birth, and there's always the things
Mhm,
that happen, but yeah,
yep.
the rescheduling the schedule, and then finding the time that fits for the family, and, it just
Yeah.
and, like, where your families are located, that was a
Oh,
thing
yeah.
where it's like, "Okay, I have to reschedule these 2 people who are nowhere near each other, maybe,"
Mhm,
when I was a student, the midwife I worked with, she had, like Monday was her Santa Rosa office day. She did, like, a
mhm,
sublease at, like, Mondays at this office, and then Tuesday was a office day at her house where we got tests done.
mhm,
Wednesday, I think, was, like, an overflow day. Thursday was Marin, and then Friday was Napa. Uh,
mhm,
and so it's like, yeah, it's finding this balance between like, are you asking your clients what are good days and times for you? Or are you like, these are my office hours and this is when I
mhm,
do? Because some families are like, do you do weekends? Do you do after hours? So my husband
mhm,
can join and like holding that balance there. Like, are you willing
mhm.
to do evenings and weekends?
Yeah. It's really, really tricky. And I think that looking at what works for you and your family,
Mhm,
and that's your boundary, right? And then you can make exceptions to that,
mhm,
right? So, like, if you have a family who can only meet on Mondays at 5 p.m., then you have to consider that when they hire you,
right,
or, how is that going to affect me? Or maybe you do some days where the partner can't come, right? So, and you write that into your contract or you make that really clear. Um, so yeah, that juggling that is really, but having that in the practice that I work at in the city, it's like that. You're never on call and doing clinic at the same time. And you always have a night's sleep in between an on call day and a clinic day.
and birth centers, I would guess,
So,
are more similar to an OB office where I'm sure they have, like, a Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 kind of
yes.
schedule, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and everybody's a little different. Like, Leah would rather do a couple appointments each day,
Hmm.
like, even if that means even on the weekend, where I would rather have, like, 6 and, like,
Hmm.
flood my Monday, Tuesday, and then
Hmm.
have the rest of the week off, you know? And
Right.
she's like, "No, I can't hang. It's way too many appointments." So, yeah,
Yeah.
everyone gets to, like, yeah, this is, like, the fun piece about building your own practice and what works for you. And as
Hmm.
a student, I think assisting a few different types of midwifery so that you can try on a
Hmm.
couple things to feel like, "Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, this is definitely not my style." Um,
Sure.
or like, "Oh, yeah, I really like that she, offers
Hmm.
evenings but keeps her weekends to her family," or whatever it is.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's really important to work in different settings and with different midwives.
Mhm.
If you're really clear that you don't want to work ever in a birth center, then I could see how you would always gravitate towards only home birth. Although I think these days for students, it's really, really worth it to have at least one experience in a birth center. And maybe that's you get licensed and you work at a birth center for 3 months and you just cover somebody's maternity leave because by then you're a new midwife, but you have something under your belt, right? So you have something to offer and you have some footing to stand on, to where you're like, okay, I know I don't want to do that. Whereas if you're a student and you come into a really busy birth center and you're not sure what you want to do, then you can kind of get pulled in several directions.
Right.
And you know s- the student preceptor relationship is an interesting one as well. I've seen that over the last almost 3 decades really change. And now we have a lot of awareness about all kinds of things, not only cultural awareness and practices, but also how to how to not take advantage of students. And students are also a little more aware of what that looks like, because if you don't know, you don't know, right? So it used to be that students would enter into a practice and the midwife would say, I need these things. And the student was like, oh, yeah, I will do these things because it's helping the midwife. And that's what I'm here to do. When really what you're there to do is learn. And while you're learning, you're offering help, right? So you start out at a place where you're usually pretty green. Hopefully, you've been a doula for a little while. You know what it's like to be on call. But yeah, that dynamic is also changing, which is good because there was a lot of students being taken advantage of and doing things that were just not necessary, or not really reaping the benefit of the work that they were doing. Um,
Can you speak,
so yeah.
like, not only being a full-time midwife, but also if there was ever a time where you were also assisting other midwives, because there's usually always 2 midwives at a
Mhm.
birth a lot of the time, and,
Right.
so not only are some midwives having their own practice load, but now they're
Hmm.
showing up for other midwives and assisting other midwives and compensation for that and what it was typically and
Hmm.
how you've seen it progress through the years in terms of compensation and, like, what's expected of
Hmm.
you?
Yeah, sure.
That's something that somebody could just do when they start
Oh
out.
yeah.
Like, you don't have to take on a full practice, you could, like, assist for a little while.
Yeah, I think that that's actually a marvelous idea, especially with the assist fees going up these days. for a long time, and I mean a long time.
Way too long.
Yeah, way too long. Over a decade, over 15 years. Assistant midwives were getting paid $300 to $500
Yeah.
for a birth and a home visit. So you do a home visit at like 36, 37 weeks, and then you would come to the birth. Well, that fee is no longer the structure. So I remember when it bumped up to 600. Everybody was like, "Wow," and now I think it's standard is like anywhere between 8 and 1,200,
Yeah, I've heard, like,
depending.
roughly, like, 10% of what your fee is,
Yeah,
you know? Mhm.
yeah, roughly 10%, and that includes, of course, a home visit. So there's that, and then also, you get paid for that home visit even if you don't go to the birth because you were sick or you were at somebody else's birth or the baby came so fast that you
Yeah,
never got a chance to come or
before.
they transferred.
Yeah.
Yeah, they transferred
How
before.
did you see payment? Like, was it that they paid you and then the balance was at the birth, or how did that unfold for that home visit?
For that, the way that I always did it was I want to pay you for the home visit
Mhm.
on the day that you come to the home visit,
Uh-huh.
right? And then I want to pay you at the birth when you come to the birth.
The remainder.
That's just the way that I've always liked doing it. I've had some midwives like for the client to pay the assistant. So
Mhm.
the client actually keeps a little envelope of cash and they pay. So then that money never exchanges hands, and that's like probably a tax thing or liability kind of thing like that. Maybe it's just easier. That's the way that they were taught. That's the way they like doing it. Yeah, and I've been paid that way, which is always, I find it a little awkward because they're not my primary client.
Yeah.
So that was always a little awkward for me.
Yeah,
I
I've
can
had
be,
situations where you show up, it's hot and heavy, there's a transfer, and then you're like,
exactly.
"Uh."
Exactly.
I've had
Yeah.
an awkward moment where I didn't say anything, but the dad remembered and was trying to get me money, and it felt so uncomfortable because they were also trying to get to the hospital. I was like,
Yes.
"Now's not the time, and I might never see you again."
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's nice to get that assistant fee, in cash. We have Venmo now, which, Apple Pay, those kinds of things, but, there's limits on, what you're reporting. So, yeah, there's that, there's the payment thing. I think also trying to fit the client with an assistant, and that may be a different assistant for each of their births. You know, midwives are people. So our lives change, our view on birth changes some, usually to some degree. Some of us, it's pretty drastic. Like maybe you had a loss and now you're like, oh, I will only go to births where the primary midwife is doing X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And so then it's important that the primary midwife and the assistant have that discussion and you understand that because then maybe that midwife assist isn't a good fit for you anymore. Or maybe that primary midwife is not a good person for you to assist anymore. And then the personalities of families, I think also, logistically, I served a huge area radius. I mean, if Ukiah was the middle, I would go 2.5 hours radius.
Mhm.
So that means that somebody could be, 4, 5 hours. And I try to stack their due dates um, to where there's like not really any predictableness to it, right? But we can hedge our bets, right? And you get pretty good at that. That intuition, you build that intuition and that
Yeah.
muscle.
Did you, like, cap months too, where you're like, "No more than this amount?"
I started doing that. And I also started capping primates. So
Mm.
first time moms for our listeners. So I started capping first time moms. So no more than 2 first time moms in a month and no more than 4.
Mhm.
And some of them would have the same due date, but I'm like one of them was a multip that would always go at 38 or 39 weeks.
Yeah. It almost
Another
feels
one was a
safer
first
when they
time
have the
mom.
same due date.
Yes, it does. I know, right? I'm like, okay, this is yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I would say in my over 10 years of being here, um, I only had a handful of days where I had 2 babies in one day. And they were usually, 20 hours apart or something like, quite a few.
Have you ever had to
Um,
call, like, a backup? Because there's no way you could go to both.
um, I don't think I have,
That's awesome.
knock on wood.
Yeah.
I have called the assistant to get there before me, because I'm leaving one area and or maybe she's just closer.
Uh-huh.
So, when I was having more clients on the coast, I would have an assistant that was on the coast or closer to the coast. So I would pick and choose the assistant so they weren't on all call for the same births, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Which felt
Because
a
then
little
if they're
safer.
with you for a birth,
Mhm.
you're like, "Oh,
Exactly.
shoot."
Yep, uh-huh, exactly. And we're in the same boat
Yeah,
traveling across the sea.
yeah.
Um, and so that felt a little safer. And so I have had that. I I would say recently, I think 2 years ago, I had a mom who went pretty quick and the assistant caught the baby and I was there for the placenta. And so I paid her a primary fee for that.
So what would that be?
I think at the time, so I paid her for the home visit, and at the time, I think I paid her 1,200 because then she left a little early.
So,
The
like,
placenta came
20%,
out and then she
20%
yeah,
nowadays would be a good like, if some
yeah,
what would I charge that or pay that?
yeah. So if you get to the birth and you catch the baby and the placenta and you're, like, doing a newborn exam, then that's at least 1,500 bucks. I think some midwives are paying 2,000 for that,
That's what
right?
we're doing, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
even, like,
So
I'm sure people get this too, but even if you don't catch the baby, like, family does it, whatever, but, like, you are responsible for this scenario. You're, like
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, you're there for the baby coming out. Let's put
Yeah.
it that way. Yeah. You're there in that moment.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and so and we are in Northern California where our fees are higher than other places. So, yeah, I guess, 10% for an assist where everybody's there. Usually the assistant is called not at the very beginning. The primary midwife goes and assesses and sees what's going on. Especially with a first time mom, I like to do that so my assistant is well rested. So then if the birth goes long, then, she can show up and then I can actually sleep for a good 4 hours. There's just so many of those dynamics. Um, and everybody practices, they have their little nuances, right? So some people they like to everybody comes at the same time. And that's the way they work. Typically, I think those are smaller practices, maybe 2 births a month, um, 3 births a month. I mean, I would have babies, babies don't always come in their due month, right? So, if you've got four every month or, they're staggered, basically one due date every week or something like that, you might have four babies in, 10 days.
Yeah.
That has happened to me as well. So, there's those nuances there. You
Yeah.
can't predict that.
So if you were going to try to guarantee that you would have some time off call and you're like the
Mhm.
sole provider, you don't have a group practice,
Mhm.
you would have to make sure you don't have clients for 8 weeks, like due for an 8-week window to
Mhm.
get a guaranteed 2, maybe 3 weeks off because you are seeing all these clients prenatally weekly and that there's
Mhm.
like the postpartum first week and
Mhm.
like you go on call at 37 weeks. There's, like 'cause some
Mhm.
people are like, "Oh, we'll just take a month off." I'm like, "You take a month off, but you don't get that month off because people dip into that month and then you go on call early for the
Mhm.
other month that is bordering
Right.
it. You really have to
Mhm.
take 2 back-to-back months off to get any little
Mhm.
window, and, like, how affordable is that for some people unless they're gonna
Mhm.
budget it in, like, "I'm gonna take this number of clients because I'm not gonna take any clients for June and
Sure.
July." How
Yeah.
do you handle, like,
Mhm.
time off and, like, being on call and your family and
Mhm. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's one way to do it. Another way to do it that I've seen is that you take a month off and that everybody that you take in that month, you tell them that you're taking that month off. And you pay the assistant midwife to come in and do some prenatals, knowing that they most likely will be the primary midwife. And with the shortage of midwives, people are willing to do that. And sometimes you get a traveling midwife to come and cover that because there's nobody else in your area. I have a couple of friends who that's what they do. And then sometimes, your assistant is willing to be the primary for that short period of time because they're never the primary, right?
And
So
I think, yeah,
there's
like you're
that.
speaking to, it's different when you have such a rural area like Sonoma County. We are blessed with midwives.
Mhm.
There
Yeah,
used
you
to
are.
actually be a lot more. When I was a student, there were a lot more midwives than there
Hmm.
are now in Sonoma County. But there
Yeah.
easily could be someone who's like, well, if you're probably not going to be here for my birth, I'll just pick this other practice who's going to
Yes.
be available, or this
Uh-huh.
other midwife who's going to be available.
Right.
But I'm sure maybe doing something where like, I'm not gonna like, I'm gonna take a month off, and so some of your prenatals, towards the end are
Mhm.
gonna be covered by someone else. I guess
Right.
getting away with that.
Yeah. So some people do that model.
Mhm.
Um, the way that I did it was I just got lucky. I didn't really There was a few times that I um intentionally took a week off. And I was like, okay, I have people who are 37 to 39 weeks right now, and I'm going to take these 2 weeks off. And I would let them know at the beginning of care or halfway through care. I'd be like, "Is this okay with you?" And the assistant would cover me for prenatals that those 2 weeks or that week. Um, but really, I mean, I just lived in this community, and everything I did was in this community.
Yeah.
I mean, there were months where I did not leave Mendocino County. I
Mhm.
mean, months and months. So when we got a Costco here, I was like, "Oh, thank goodness," because now I could go to Costco, right? And then there's also living in a rural area, sometimes I could not go down to the river because there's no cell
Yeah.
service,
Yes, that's
right? So there's that's a
knowing
big
what
piece
beaches
too.
you can go to, what walks you can go on. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
remember when I was
exactly.
a student, my preceptor calling me like, "Okay, Sophia, she called me and I'm running back to my car," because she was like on this long
Mhm.
jog and she was like booking it back to her car
Yep.
because she's a third time mom. And,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
oh, like even she's like, treadmills are where it's at because you just turn it off.
Right. Yes.
You don't want to
Yeah.
be like a 20-minute down the road.
Yep. Yep. I totally hear that. Yeah, I can appreciate that. So yeah, and sometimes, I would say at least twice a year, the babies just came. So then I was like, oh, I have 2 weeks,
Yeah, last
and
minute, like, let's do this.
I'm like, okay. And my husband's self-employed, and when the kids were homeschooled, of course, it was no big deal. But then even when they were in private school or public school, we were like, "We're just taking these weeks off. Sorry." And we
Yeah.
would just take the kids and we would go camping or go to San Francisco for 2 days,
Mhm.
and go to the science museum or do something like that. It worked out that I would get some time off. I would say, like a lot of people, COVID was really difficult. I think the thing with COVID is that it was lonely. So what one of the things that I noticed for me, and I think for a lot of midwives who were solo practice, was that it was really hard to get a consistent assistant because everybody had different views on sharing bubbles and things like that. And I ended up going to a lot of births alone, which was not fantastic for many reasons. It really showed the loneliness of the work to me. Sometimes I would have a student, but usually it was just me in the clinic listening to myself talk and say the same thing about GBS 4 times that day.
I know
So
sometimes I have this moment, I'm like, "Why don't families know this yet?" I'm like, "Oh, because 'cause I've been saying it for
because
decades,
I've been
but
saying they don't
they
know
just
this.
heard it for the first time."
Yeah.
You feel like a
And
broken record. Yeah.
yeah, and I did things, and I was like you, where I wanted 2 very packed days, right? So I would have 2 very packed days of office visits, and I would take a 2-hour lunch, and I would walk down the street to the restaurant that had lunch at twice a week. And I became very good friends with the waitress there. And yeah, they were always open on the days that I had clinic. And Heather, who's like the floor manager there, and the bartender and the hostess and all the things, she and I became really good friends. Um, so yeah, I mean, And that was just my way of like getting out and feeding myself, feeding my soul in that work.
Yeah, that's the other thing I love about teaching and having the group practice is the camaraderie of it. And, when
Yes.
things are beautiful, like to
Yeah.
have people to celebrate with, like obviously the family, but
Yes.
then when things are hard to have somebody to process with and grieve
Yes.
who is in it with you. And, not everyone is that way. I love pulling with my students and chatting and
Right.
getting to know each other and it just feels more intimate.
Yeah. When I had a student, Emma, who was my student for a long time, and I think it was a good year and a half. Um, and we did that. She came to all the clinic days, and I picked her up, and we, rode together to all the home visits, and that was so special and so lovely.
And for
Um,
people listening,
yeah.
Emma is one of the OG Born Wild creators.
Yes.
She actually named Born Wild. I don't know if you know that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
She
No.
did, yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause her and Leah and I started the podcast together before there was even the group
Right.
practice of Born Wild Midwifery.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, if you go back to the very first episodes, anyone listening, you'll hear a lot of Emma.
Yes, that's true. That's right. So that was nice. And then I was like starting to slow down my practice, and it was really time for her to get some of those birth center skills that you get or a busier practice. And then I was lonely again. So I think that there are some of those hidden costs that are not monetary, because business is business, and you can structure that, and you can look at that in myriad of ways. And I mean, anybody who's out there listening, I do private consulting. Shout out for my own
Go
private
for it.
consulting. And one is on business, one is paperwork, templates, client care, and then another is legal stuff, legal ramifications, chart review, those kinds of things.
Mhm.
But that's like a totally different part of midwifery. Then there's like the soul of midwifery, right? Which is, how is it feeding you, and how are you feeding it? And what is your relationship with this job of service? And I've talked to people who are EMTs, pediatricians, psychologists, family therapists, police officers, um, all firefighters. I've talked to a lot of people about service, like how is service affecting you? How does this job affect you? And I will say that a lot of it is very similar to midwifery. Now, those jobs are readily trainable, available. There's financing for all of that, for your education, and they're supported by the greater community, right? So midwifery has that added layer of you being a minority, right? The profession is a minority profession.
Are they held, like, criminally liable?
Well, you mean those professions?
Yeah.
Not as much as midwives. No.
Yeah.
No. No.
And
Not as
that
much.
is
No.
gonna lead into probably
Mhm.
the topic we talk about next time. We do
Right.
wanna dive into midwifery as a devotion, but also, like, the regulations around it and what that
Mhm.
means for client autonomy, and the piece
Mhm.
that I'm finding the balance with is I'm just remembering that I matter too.
Right.
I swung so far the other
Yes.
like, "Mama, whatever you want," and then I've forgotten about myself and that I matter and that their birth
Right.
does affect me, in a
Right.
million ways, and that there has to be room for both of us. Uh,
Right.
so that's what I wanna cover next time we talk, but,
I think that's a great topic. And I think it touches on your original question today, which was, what have you learned?
Mhm.
Right. And so I do see, I'm moving more towards, with my master's degree, leaning towards, okay, I could work in midwifery education, right, at a higher level. So, and I also want to say that there is an Associate of Science midwifery degree that is going to be offered in the fall of 2026. And we're now helping people enroll through Saracoso Community College. So that program is MEEK accredited. So it has that MEEK midwifery oversight, but it's also approved by the medical board, and it's in this container of community college. So it's all paid for.
Mm,
Can
mhm.
you imagine that? Most of it is virtually.
Right, great.
Yes. And then we're looking at different ways. like maybe you might come on site for clinic stuff, but we're also looking at having a mobile clinic module mobile
Love it.
where we go, and so students can, all over the state. And so that's something to look for. A little plug for that. It's on the Citizens for Midwifery. I think it's on the CAM website and on the college's website. But one of the things is I'm getting in touch more and more with new midwives, right? Because I'm teaching them, and it's in a different capacity than preceptorship. And I noticed that, like myself, when I was a doula sitting there with Penny Simkin, you have this idea of what you're going in for and what your passion is about midwifery, right? And you're really focused on that. And I think that as that focus starts to open in your mind of realizing that it's not just one thing, we're doing a myriad of things, and not just clinically speaking, not just like the baby comes out and you're watching the baby regulate and the mom regulate and bleeding, and whether you're hands on or hands off, you're doing these things, you are watching, and then also holding the space in case there's a transfer. All of these things that we're doing when we have this like focus, which is our passion, which brings us to this work, that's wonderful. Never, never, never lose sight of that, because that's going to be your unique part of being a midwife that you're offering the community that you're serving, and also the midwives that your sisterhood is with, right? So that's really important, but it will come around. So that piece will be the part that comes around that you're learning. That's the part that your soul is looking for in this work of learning, and it's going to come back around. So for myself, it's social justice, right? And that has always been my focus. And that has gotten me in trouble. I have gotten kicked out of hospitals. And then I had to be like, oh gosh, maybe I need to do this in a different
Yeah,
way,
that wasn't helpful long term.
you know? And so then I had to really like have it enter in like reflection in myself, right? About how am I going to do this work and be effective, right, in this way. And so that's been a journey of mine. And now here I am, and I'm looking at, possibly being like the director of something, like either a large midwifery educational program or a hospital for smooth transitions. And I'm going to bring that social justice frame with me, right? And that's my core part and my uniqueness. But I now have learned so much and gone through so much that I'm offering that in a different way, right? Where it becomes actual mentorship. So yours is going to be that, like, I just dove all in and I gave all of myself, and now you're coming through that part of reflection of like, oh, and there's layers of that, right? And how you're learning how to be the best midwife to give the most of yourself, while also standing by yourself and being like, okay, I have to feed myself too, because otherwise I just can't keep doing this. And so, yeah, midwifery is a really interesting profession in that, if you stick with it. And at some point in time, all midwives need to go to therapy. you
Yeah.
know, um,
That's how you become the therapist your clients need.
it's so true. It's so true.
Because
Yeah.
little do you know, you will become that. And yeah.
Yeah. And how you stay married and how you have like a good
Yeah.
relationship with your children.
Yes. That is
Um,
such a big piece. It's very different now that my kids are older and
mhm,
also we've done the work. But yeah, we used to have a meeting every time I finished a birth. Like, how could I have supported you better while I was gone? And
mhm,
I came up with a rule: you are not allowed to contact me while I'm at a birth unless I need to come home. Like, it's got to be
mhm.
that bad. I can't have anything distracting me. Like, one time, my daughter, who was like 1 or something, she had a fever. And then I was just distracted and pulled that whole birth. I felt so
Yeah.
guilty for not being there to snuggle her.
Huh.
I felt like, hurry up with this birth. And I was like, I can't have that.
Yeah.
And so I know if my phone rings and it's my family and I'm at a birth, I need to answer it. It's the last
Yes.
is when my husband cut part of his finger off and he needed to know if he needed to go have it sewn back on or
That's a
keep
reason to call.
keeping it on ice for how long. Is that okay? I was like, "Oh my god."
Yeah. That's definitely like shoots right into the area of I need to call my wife who is a healthcare person and
We
see
need to at least
even if you weren't a healthcare person, I guess you'd be like, by the way.
Yeah, but just different things, like what did he need for support? What do
Mhm.
I need for support when I'm gone? There was some conversation too about, like, when I would leave, he'd be like, "Okay." And I'm like, "No, fake it. Fake it. Even if you
Right.
think like you can handle this right now,
Mhm.
I have to have 100% of your
Mhm.
support. You want me to do this job?
Yeah.
Have to have 100%, like, "Go get it, babe, like, have fun at the
Yeah.
just, like, fake
Mhm.
it until I get
Yeah.
home, and then you can crumble and tell me how hard it was."
Yeah.
Um, and
I
also,
agree.
when my kids were little, my I had to have this, like, "Okay, I need to pee, I need to eat something before I walk in that door because
Mhm.
I'm about to get punished by my children," you know?
Mhm.
They're gonna be livid at me that I was gone, and they're gonna fall
Mhm.
apart and all the things, and I'll be
Mhm.
trapped under their crying bodies for the next 3
Yes.
hours, and,
Yes.
so I have to have peed and eaten. Those were, like,
Yeah.
rules.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the partners, and that's like a whole nother aspect, right? My husband did a podcast on midwifery wisdom long time ago about being married to a midwife.
Mhm.
And he has long said, that he's like, maybe I should write a book one day. I'm like, I think you should.
Uh,
And really the way that my husband has looked at it, which I didn't tell him to do this, he's just this way. He said, we're part of her supporting the community. This is also our community. And so, me and the kids supporting her going out there and doing this work is also supporting the community. And he would reiterate that to the children as
mm,
well as they were getting older and as they were understanding, like, you're part of this community and you're helping this community by allowing your mom to go out and do this work and by supporting her.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure as soon as I shut the door and I got in the car, it was like, oh gosh, okay, let's see what
Because
the day is
the big
bringing.
thing is, like, I have no idea when she's coming back.
Yes,
It could be
exactly.
tonight, and I might not see her for 3 days,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know? Yeah,
mhm,
it's a
yeah,
lot. It's a lot to, like,
yes,
unending,
it
responsibility.
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I remember
yeah.
my kids recently have stopped crying about if the baby was a boy or girl because I have a son and I have a daughter. And of course, my son always wanted it to be a boy. She always wanted it to be a daughter. I was like, you guys, it can't always be a boy girl twin birth. Like, he is going to be sad. But yeah, I was always like, what was the baby? And I was like, oh God. Okay. One of you burst into tears. I'm
Oh,
really
yeah,
looking forward to the next conversation. And yeah, I really do want it to be on like the idea of midwifery as a devotion, like life calling, but like how to avoid burnout if that's even possible, and like the highs and lows of midwifery, and also just like, those moments where you're like, why do I even do this? Because some lows
yeah,
really low, and you're
oh,
like,
yeah,
there are a lot of other jobs that don't require this like
mhm,
emotional
yeah,
aspect of, that even like affects
mhm,
families, and
mhm,
and then like what keeps you going,
yeah,
when those happen.
yeah, yeah, what keeps you going? Yeah, and then that backdrop of that legal
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. So,
that's
like,
always that
client
always
autonomy
mhm,
and, like, the feeling of responsibility to the state because,
mhm,
when midwives are getting reported, it's usually the hospital, it's not the family.
sure,
It's not
mhm,
about midwives who are like, "I can't do this." It's not because they don't trust birth or they don't trust the families they're working with.
mhm,
It's like,
yeah,
anyone else finds out, even if I'm in the right, the amount of money this is gonna cost my family,
right? Oh, yeah, yeah,
you know?
bankruptcy,
It's
yeah,
just so scary. So, and that
mhm,
affects decision making for midwives and,
mhm, yeah.
such a big topic.
Yeah, it's such a big topic.
Um,
Yeah, and audience, if you have any questions for us or any
Mhm.
parameters in that subject, please reach out to Sophia
Yes.
and, yeah.
And will you, because things have changed throughout the years, will you like drop how people can connect with you if they want to connect with you?
Sure. Yeah, I think that my Google page, my website's down, but I think it's still on Google if you searched Mountain Valley Midwifery. and my phone number is there. You can also reach me at Lisa Rawson, Rawson at hotmail.com. I've had that Hotmail address for probably 30 years, maybe 35. Um, and yeah, oh, and Instagram, Lisa dash Rawson dash LM, I think it is. And everybody just stick with it. Just stick with it. You know, if you're at a birth right now and you're listening to this and it's so long and you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm in burnout.
Mhm.
Probably tomorrow or the next day you won't be.
Mhm.
So,
And I mean, I had a moment where I was like, I need to just stay home and rest and cry and
mhm,
go to the bathhouse and do all the things.
mhm.
And
Yep.
as much as it killed me inside, I just canceled 2 days of appointments. My students were like,
Mhm.
"Oh my god, is she okay?" Because I
Right?
never do that.
Yeah.
They're really worried about me. I was like, "I will be okay." Like, I
Mhm.
just need to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And just trust that the families will be held in the right timing.
Yeah, usually the things that we're worrying about, like, "Oh gosh, they won't wanna reschedule, they won't understand."
Mhm.
That's not true. They're
Yeah,
they're they're caring for you just as much as you're caring for them,
yeah,
just in a different way.
yeah, yeah.
It was good to see you again.
Thanks for listening to the Born Wild podcasts. Find us on Instagram or email bornwildpodcasts@gmail.com. If this episode supported you, please share it and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It'll help more families find us. This podcast is for education and storytelling only and is not medical or individualized health advice. And as always, stay wild.